what are you doing? Like that's how you're thinking about other people that much. You have so much more to offer. Got off, drove around a bunch trying to connect with my family, and then connect with some guys I knew from the military, former instructor of mine, former mentor, and still current mentor. Linked up with them early in the morning, got over there to Dodger Stadium and sent it, and
really?
We got kind of separated in the beginning. There was it was a zoo. It was a freaking zoo of people at the corralling area, and then we just all took off, and it's kind of hard. Usually I'm able to get to the front of races in the past, and this one I had a few thousand people in front of me, so wanting to run, just wanting to run the pace I wanted to run. It was just like, okay, but it was all good. I mean, I think the good thing about a marathon is, at least it being my second, I learned from my first, you need to take your time,
right?
Not just, you can't just go.
Right.
I was a runner in my past, but not really a marathoner. I think the furthest I had run was 20, and this was, and then leading into this, I had only run like 10.
Right.
So did Austin Marathon and then doing LA, but yeah, it was fun. It was a good time.
So you're primarily road runner?
No, well, I'd say primarily. I mean, now I'll run road races. I'm not fast enough anymore to be on the track, but I started off.
No trail?
No trail. I know.
Missing out, bro.
Yeah, nobody's perfect. But yeah, started off on the track.
Right.
And so,
okay.
Yeah.
So when you guys went out to LA, it was some other veterans that you were with, and this was all, you're helping raise money, and your brother played a part in this, right?
Yeah. So essentially, I had just run the Austin Marathon, and my good buddy Mike O'Dowd, who runs his own defense company group called Defense Strategies Group, he has a very good relationship with Guardian Revival.
Okay.
And they are a New York-based nonprofit that spreads awareness and raises money for mental health programs, things like that, for veterans and first responders. And this specific one was raising money towards awareness towards veteran and first responder suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother 7 years ago was a combat veteran, a Marine, who took his own life. And so for me, one of the things I know about a lot of those guys, and the majority of these guys that we ran with that day were in special operations. And so I think, their experience in the GWAT, since, they had been deployed, they've lost brothers of their own, maybe not blood, but, as close as you can get to that. So, for me, it hit home pretty hard, but I think unfortunately my story is, and my brother's story is not unique.
Right.
It's an epidemic. I think it's 120,000 veterans have committed suicide since the global war on terror kicked off.
Yeah, dude, it's near and dear to my heart. We've lost more people coming back from deployment than we did on deployment. It was 22 a day. So you talk about an epidemic of veterans that we sit here and lose, and then add in first responders and stuff like that, and it's getting scary because this is continue to happen, and now the first responders, like that whole occupation, is demonized in the media. We don't have young people signing up for the military anymore, so it's putting us in a pretty scary position. Like, why would somebody want to sign up for that, especially when they see stuff like that going on, and then you start thinking about the care we as veterans or first responders get once they get out or anything like that. It's pretty scary. So it's anything we can do to continue to promote what's going on, and keep bringing light to it. I think we need to do.
People need to know, and I think also people need to understand that veterans are not that different than everyday people. I mean, they are everyday people. I think what's important to understand, though, is they got to experience something that few of us ever do. And I think that police and firefighters experience it because, their trust has to go beyond, hey, just the surface level. I mean, you this guy's got to trust you up into your own life and his life. And I think that creates a unique bond, obviously, with people. But, for me, one of the things that Mike, he told this story one time. It was kind of funny.
Mike
O'Dowd,
okay.
the gentleman who started Defense Strategies Group. He used to tell this story like, he was talking about team trust, and he went to the strip club with his buddy, and his wife like confronted him and was just like, "Hey, I heard that such and such was at the strip club the other night," and it's like, was he there? And he's like, "Honey, he was not there," and we were like, "Was he there?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I was with him." And we're like, "Well, what do you mean? Why'd you lie to your wife? Why'd you tell her that?" He's like, "Well, because my wife will forgive me, but I got to go to war with that guy." And I never forgot that. And I think that, that's just something that it's really hard for people who don't go through that and to understand. And in my experience, I'm not a combat veteran. I didn't deploy. But I got to get a taste of that a little bit, of what that camaraderie is like. And I think what happens is it's taken away from them very quickly. And it's I don't even know if you can replicate it again. I think that's why a lot of, veterans do become police officers or firefighters, because there's that, your worth is your devotion to the group. Your worth in the group is your devotion to the group. What job can you really find that is not transactional and that has that kind of deeper bond? It's funny when you hear people talk about, "Oh, we're the Navy SEALs. We're the Special Forces of Sales."
People say that?
I mean, I think Mike was telling me again, like that's seen it before, but it's like, you have no idea what you're talking about, because none of you would give your life for anybody else here. And
true.
I think that's something that, I mean, I don't know, in your experience, like, was that something that you saw that guys missed out on when they came back? Was that, from like
the camaraderie aspect? Or
just like having that kind of deeper bond. It was like,
it's funny you say this, because I was just talking about this with my wife, and I think there's so many instances where like I've been around that type of loyalty. You know what I mean? I've had people in my life that I would give my life for, hands down. I think civilians can say, "Oh, my wife, my kids, I'll do that for," but to someone that's not related to you, but it's like, you know what I mean? These are my brothers with me. I've found where I'm ready to give that loyalty, but then I don't receive it in return, and then I'm feeling jaded because I don't receive it in return. But how can I expect somebody that's never lived this life or been deployed or anything like that, how can I expect them to understand that type of loyalty? So it's a me thing. It's not a them thing. And so I think you do very much find, I'm a very much team person, emotional in the sense that, like, when, if I call somebody brother, if I tell someone I love them, like that, those words don't come easy to me. I don't just say that to anybody. And so when I label somebody a brother and I don't feel I get that brother energy in return, it's like, you know what I mean? And so, yeah, you do yearn for it. You feel lonely kind of in the world and everything. And so I definitely feel like that's an aspect of it for sure.
Yeah, it's almost like veterans, like, it's really this amazing gift, I think, like, that humanity and has, is veterans have this opportunity to teach civilians about this.
Yeah.
And civilians have this opportunity to learn, listen, and also teach veterans about how you can, articulate your story and bring this into the world. Because literally, that is totally different, being overseas, than being here. And the hard part is like in World War II, for instance, like the civilians were kind of in the fight with them.
Mm-hmm.
So, they understood the sacrifice, and even the folks in Europe, even in Britain doing the bombings, during the Blitzkrieg. Like they understood, they experienced an enormous amount of loss and peril. So, in my opinion, I think that civilians have this kind of misconception of post-traumatic stress. It's really an inability to just re-enter society and feel that relational bond again. And I think it's something very deep and human. And I think it's a lot of us have gotten out of touch with, because suicide is not something that is just, again, it's not unique to veterans. It's happening across the board with a lot of different demographics. And social media has perpetuated it. There's a lot of reasons why, or you can try and find the genesis. But I personally, my belief, and I'm not, a researcher, just what I've read and in my own experience, what I've come to learn is that it really starts at that human bond. I think people feel alone.
Yeah. Dude, I can remember times being deployed, and I wasn't, when I was deployed, I wasn't well. I was hooked on painkillers with my back injury and stuff like that, and so I was in a very depressed place anyways. But I would try to find ways, like, you know what a husky is? Or for doing route clearance, looking for IEDs. So for those listening that don't know, you send vehicles out to hopefully find IEDs before your convoy rolls through and gets hit. And like
kind of a sketchy thing to think about.
Yeah, but I mean, it's super up armored, but it's still very dangerous. But I would be the first one. But I'll do it, like, not as if I'm gonna put like, kill myself in that sense. You know what I mean? Like, if I go do that, I'm gonna shoot the likelihood of that happening, just because I was so miserable with life and where I was at and everything like that.
Did you feel like you felt worthless, and that's like, oh, my life is not important as my friends' lives?
For sure. Yeah, just, I mean, there was so many things that probably played into it, but like I would look for ways, and then in my mind, like, what greater honor can I do than give my life for the country, give my life for my friends, all that stuff. Ultimately, obviously, that didn't happen, but
sure.
There was definitely many years of my life where I would look for opportunities that would heighten the risk of me losing my life, we'll say.
Did you feel like
not needing to do so, but I would still.
Yeah, just engaging in more risky behavior.
For sure.
Was that something that, it carried over from deployment? Like, once that was gone, that was something that, like, you kind of had to up the stakes, just like...
Yeah, with the whole adrenaline stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I was running around in the drug life, so that wasn't difficult to do. But, yeah, I lost my way for a long time after deployment. I dove into the drug aspects like many people do.
Did you feel like, it's one of the things I noticed, a lot of people using, and how they get there is one thing, but how they kind of pull themselves out is something totally different. I really, even as someone who was sober, I didn't know a pathway for my brother, because, and just a full transparency, my brother, it wasn't this, like, again, this event, it was this kind of like longer term thing that when he came home, and he was in and out of Iraq in school, and having to go to school, and then go to Iraq, go back, and and
so to paint the picture, your brother was a
Marine.
Marine, okay.
And I think his first deployment was October of 2004.
Okay.
I think that's right, maybe a little before that. And so he was around for that initial push into Fallujah. And I think from what I've read, and again, I was younger at the time, I was only in the 8th grade, I think it was pretty surreal for a lot of people, because, we had friends in high school who went, and he had, like, there's just people who didn't come home, and it didn't get talked about necessarily all the time, but it was a war that I think that I hear a lot of veterans talk about today that kind of we could ignore, like I said, and didn't really realize how bloody that whole thing was. Right. But so his job was a lot of convoy security, which extremely scary, potentially, getting blown up and not even knowing it was coming, right. And I, whether you're going down, I guess it's Route Michigan, or you're, coming outside the wire and doing any kind of security, but he was not in any kind of direct action so to speak. A lot of it was just kind of waiting to get hit. I mean, an ROE at the time was like, you have to be shot at for you to return fire, which is a crazy thing to tell a 20-year-old, 21-year-old kid,
Yeah. So for those that don't know, what he's saying is rules of engagement. We as the United States, we have rules of engagement that we have to follow in wartime that a lot of other countries don't have to follow. So we are not allowed to fire upon anybody no matter what they're doing until they've actually fired upon you. They could literally pull a weapon up into your face and you can't do anything, which is wild. It's hard to paint the picture, but when you want to be over there in a world where women and children are strapping themselves up with explosives, cars, trucks, anything could be loaded with things like you want to talk about constantly being on guard or not knowing what's coming at you. And then you have to deal with all these rules of what you are allowed to do and not allowed to do. And then here, one mistake and your career's gone, your freedom could be gone, like all these things. You want to talk about like high stakes.
Yeah.
Lots of pressure.
John used to always talk, he used to love movies. And obviously being a Marine, he loved Full Metal Jacket.
Mm-hmm.
And he used to quote, he's like, we got to Iraq and I remember I'd be on the phone with him. And he's telling us about and first off, for anybody who should deploy, you should keep your family very much in the dark about what you're doing over there. And my brother did not
Oh,
freaked my mother out. Like and I think he learned later on that maybe is not the most productive way to communicate from back home. But when he got the time, but I remember him talking about, he's like talking about Full Metal Jacket and he's like quoting Cowboy. He's like, well, when we're in way, what I thought a war was there's the enemy, shoot him. And I think that's a lot of what civilians think.
Yeah.
But obviously, that's not the case.
No, we're not in wars in the jungles anymore. We're in urban terrain, close quarters, tall buildings. I mean, unless you're in the mountains in Afghanistan and stuff like that.
Yeah.
My first call home when I got in country over there, we had been getting mortar fire since I had been there. And so at that point, after a week or two, wasn't even registering to hear it anymore. And so my first call home, my mother sits there and hears mortar fire off in the background. She's freaking out. I have no idea why she's freaking out. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, you don't hear that? And I mean, it's sitting there going on in the background, and it was just oblivious. So, and then every time I called home after that, like I had to make sure nothing was going on or anything like that, because just one phone conversation with my mom and hearing her cry like that, I was like, oh. Can't do that again.
Yeah, I think the mindset also is very, very different. Like I just texted a buddy the other day. I just said I didn't really get into it like, hey, give him a call and like talk his ear off or say, just say, hey man, stay safe. Heard you're leaving. And he said, thanks, Because I think one thing I've noticed while a lot of those guys go over the deploy, it's just you kind of have to, I don't know, put your game face on is the right attitude, but just something I've noticed is just that your mindset has totally changed, and just kind of what you're going to be doing, what your mission, your priority, your focus needs to be on, and I think you gotta, at least that's, when I was in, that's what our instructors preached to us was like, you got to have everything kind of squared away back home before you leave, because you're not going to be an asset to your team if that's all fouled up, and so you just try and keep communication with those guys too, like a minimum.
Right.
But
yeah, and then you want to talk about, luckily when I deployed without a girlfriend, but I watched the guys that did deploy with girlfriends and wives and husbands and boyfriends and all that stuff, and unfortunately with the rate of adultery in the military is not good.
Yeah.
And so you want to talk about seeing, you put yourself in the most extreme adrenaline-filled situations of wartime, and then your mind is back on what's my wife, girlfriend, husband, boyfriend doing back there. They're not answering the phone. So-and-so saw him here. They posted this on social media. You want to talk about guys sitting there like breaking down on their knees in tears, dude. It's a rough thing to see.
Yeah, and that's, again, that just goes back to what I was saying earlier with, I think civilians need to understand, like, your person's over there. It's like, hey, your words are very powerful right now. Like, you should be very careful about what you say, what you introduce, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So I think, just to kind of like transition to that is like, when John got home, it was one of these things where I don't think he understood. He'd get all excited. He was so proud to be a Marine. I think as most Marines are.
Tremendous.
Yes, and the history gets brought with that, and even when my dad tried to convince him to join the Marine Corps, because the Army guy came in and was just like, hey, this is what it's going to do for like when I set you up for school money. He's like, oh, cool, it could be really good when you exit, and it looked more of it like selling like a job, But the Marine Corps recruiter is just like, look, this is what this means to me, and great sales line, like, I don't know if you're ready yet. And I was like, I'm ready. Right. Tell some 20-year-old kid that, and he told my dad, he's like, if I join the military, I'm joining the Marine Corps, and I always thought that was really cool, and so anyways, my brother was my hero. My brother and I had, my dad was very, he loved us a lot. He struggled, I think, with his own growth as a man, and he was at times very abusive to my brother and I, physically and verbally. And I think, and my mom had come out of, had dealt with that before herself. She has like one of 7. Mother was a paranoid schizophrenic, and so I could connect with her on stuff, but she was just very motivated, had, worked like 2 or 3 jobs, like worked her ass off to get to where she was working she was a director at the YMCA. My dad was a federal prosecutor. But he was kind of like, Mr. Big Shot. Like he's very, very smart, very good litigator, very, knew what he was doing, but he was arrogant. He was cocky. And I think that there was a lot of, the way he kind of raised us, it was very different. It was, I think it was a little manipulative at times, and it was a lot of narcissistic abuse. I think later on I understood. But my Johnny and I were 6 years apart. So Johnny's way to deal with it was, fuck him. I get the fuck out of this house.
I'm gonna go be a Marine.
Yeah, I'm going to be a Marine. Well, and he went off to party at school, and then they called him back when grades weren't good, and they're like, you're either going to Alabama, or you're going to a public school, or you're going to join the military. He's like, all right, fine, I'll join the military.
Right.
And throughout that time, my father
You're from Alabama, right?
I'm from Alabama originally, just so we're clear. And my father at the time he almost died when I was in 2nd grade. And he had just a plethora of health issues, diabetic, hemochromatosis, had a lot of he had epilepsy. So he had to eventually retire, and he kind of had his career taken from him, had his kind of manhood taken from him, how he defined himself. And I don't think he had built a really great relationship with his kids and his family, and a healthy one at least. And then on top of that, he can't really do much to continue to build that because his health is just declining. And at the time, early 2000s, as you know, you go through surgeries, they were handing out opioids consistently. Oh, yeah. And how I recall was he was taking, I think he was overprescribed, and I think I think his doctor at the time, who I think was a childhood friend, was overprescribing these things, and I won't name his name or anything like that. But I didn't get it. I was too young, and I remember my brother paying attention to all this, and my brother was very smart. And I remember one time I was upset and we were crying, and I was crying. John had picked me up from practice. And I was telling him about what happened with Dad, and he's like, Dad is crazy. Just straight up told me. And I talked to Johnny about that, and I just what do you mean? And he just focus on what you got to do. And it was very much just turn it off. And we had this very bad relationship, and then.
You and your brother?
My dad and I. Okay. But my brother and I had this kind of we used to backpack together. We used to go on camping trips, and I loved everything about John. He was my hero, and what we did together. And I think any siblings that go through a traumatic situation when they're younger tend to bond a little differently.
For sure.
And so we did. And I think Johnny was older, but he also didn't have that kind of direction with a male figure, right away. Mm-hmm. So he drank a lot, and being around a bunch of Marines didn't really help that either.
Yep, feeling the fire.
Yeah, so.
Me too.
Yeah. And then, when he was deploying, I was dealing with Dad. I was dealing with the worst parts of Dad. And so it was like my person was gone.
Yeah.
And so I found it through running. And that's kind of how that transpired. Anyways, I think the last time that I ended up, signing a track scholarship with the University of Kentucky. I knew my dad was not in good health. I knew that he would eventually die, pretty soon. And the coach there is, he had lost his parents to cancer. And so I kind of connected with him and went to UK, signed a scholarship. And then I think my brother's last interaction with my father was he hit him in the face. And he never talked to him again. And then in the spring of 2010, he died. I think a lot of times I felt really bad for my father because he had this disease that it's that debilitating. You can't really, do the things that you want to do, and you just see this person's health decline and also their mental acuity.
From one extreme to another too with your dad.
Yeah, it was difficult. So, and in running, I just you learn to not. I think my cousin who's a physician, he said you're sublimating. You're not you're engaging this very healthy, productive thing, but you're actually engaging in a very unhealthy way because you're not confronting it. Mm-hmm. So never really confronted that kind of trauma with him, with my dad, and then with John, I think that's when he really started to struggle. It was in about 2011 or so, and he was trying to find his purpose, and what he was going to do, and nothing really kind of blew his hair back. And I think he started engaging in drug use and alcohol, and I think one of the things that I couldn't understand was just every time I was around him how much he was drinking, mm-hmm. and it just got worse. And to me, I kind of just how do you how do I tell you what to do?
Right.
I didn't feel like the confident.
You're the younger brother.
Exactly.
You look up to him.
Yeah. So after that, I think that was kind of the start of John's, decline. He tried to go to law school, and we had and I was, he tried to go to law school. I had graduated transferred to the University of Texas and graduated there from 2013. Had a successful track career there. Tried to run professionally. I'd say I ran post collegially. I didn't make any money, right. But that was kind of that route.
Right. Did I don't know what the answer is, but so many, I could look at it so many different ways, right? The one way I choose to look at it is, the military, in a lot of cases, not saying all cases, but in a lot of cases, the military doesn't attract the cream of the crop, right?
No.
If you graduate with a 4.0, chances are, unless you're going in to be an officer or whatever, you're not, you know what I mean? You're not enlisting in any of the branches of the military. So you get people from all different walks of life, different forms of trauma, substance abuse, this or that. But the amount of people when we came back from deployment that dove into drugs and alcohol and stuff like that is staggering. Things happened and people did things that were, under the influence and all that of people that I would give my life for. Mm-hmm. Can't even fathom. My squad leader, he came back home and found out that his wife had been unfaithful, and so he emptied a clip out on her, turned the gun on himself, and this is with both of his children in the house. And so it's the most uncharacteristic thing for this man to ever do. I would give my life for him. I looked up to him just a lot like what you're saying. Mm-hmm. You look up to your older brother. Like, he was the gold standard of an American soldier for me. So to hear him do something as heinous and that blows my mind to this day. And so, like, I don't know what the answer is for us veterans. You had a question?
Yeah. Do you, when something like that happens, I mean, you obviously, like, I don't know that person who would do something like that. But at the same time, I feel like that is such a, it's almost like we're all capable of something, of incredibly horrible things. And having seen that and knowing that, it's like, I remember I had a friend who was, struggling with drug abuse. It was on the track team in Texas, and my roommate at the time was like, Pat, when you're dealing with a drug addict, it's like two different people, and you have to learn how to separate that. And I didn't understand what he meant until I came back and saw my brother. But I guess what I'm trying to ask you is, like, do you feel like having under that understanding that, like, you knew where that person was prior to then, and you watched them kind of go down this path over time to get to this point where you murder suicide essentially, and I feel like that's to me it's like you've been almost given a gift of like what something can become, and why it's so important to stop it early and not, and it's just you've had that life experience, like, where this could lead, and you'd be kidding yourself if you thought that I would never do something like that.
Right. Yeah.
I know, you know what I'm saying? Like,
no, I get exactly what you're saying. I don't think anybody, people could listen to what I just said and say they would never do that, but you don't know what it's like. You have no idea from the day he was born till now, you have no idea what that man's been through. Why is the world or family or experiences conditioned him to be that way, right? What happened overseas that conditioned him that way? What was the dynamic between him and his wife? Had she done this before? Like, I don't know any of that information. If you look at it, plain day of what he did, horrible, absolutely. But I could never say I wouldn't do the same thing had I been through everything he had been through.
Yeah, it's like a mark of humility almost to know, like, you're in control, but you're not. You don't have as many hands. Hands. There's maybe a couple other hands on the wheel if you allow them to be.
Right. I mean, who hasn't lost their patience in traffic? You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, any little bit like that, just magnified of whatever thing that happened. You can't say that. But dude, the unfortunately, like, for me, man, the big thing with me was the culture of the military, right? So I got injured, and the answer at the time is to put me on painkillers, which I took, right? But the culture in the military, I'm not sure about the Navy, which you were in, but in the Army at this time, if you're hurt, you're kind of worthless to them, right? And this is before deployment, so everyone starts looking at you like you don't want to deploy. You're scared to go. Well, I'm super competitive. That's not going to happen.
No, you shut up. You keep your mouth shut.
I did everything I had to do to make sure I deployed, to make sure I was going to go on mission, to do all that stuff, which fucked myself in the long run, but that's just what happened, what I did. And then you come back, and you go from extreme situations to now back stateside where you don't have nothing to do. You've stacked up all this money because you couldn't spend it over in Iraq, so now you get back here. Now people are dealing with trauma. You're dealing with trying to rebuild marriages. Your kids don't know who you are anymore because you were gone so long. Like, all these different things, and so people start turning to alcohol, drugs, and stuff like that. But then, let's say you start getting in a little bit of trouble. They let you believe that there's no life after the military. If you get kicked out of the military, your life is over. You're fucked. And so I thought that's what it was. So as soon as I started getting into some trouble, they gave me one opportunity to get help. They were going to send me to a 30-day treatment center. They came back and got me after 3 days. I was still in the middle of going through withdrawals, and told me that they needed me to sign paperwork because we were going to go out to the field pretty soon. And so I told them, the first sergeant was going to give me the weekend to think about it if you want to go back or you're going to go to the field. And I was like, I have to go back. Like, I'm addicted. I'm a drug addict. I need to go back to treatment. He's like, take the weekend. And I was like, I'm going to get high as soon as I go back. As soon as you let me go, I'm going to get high. I'm telling him straight up. He's like, take the weekend. You're fine. Take the weekend. I go get high, come back Monday morning, let him know that I need to go back. He piss tests me on the spot. Boom. That starts me getting chaptered out of the military. So now my career's gone. And so now I'm like, my life's fucked. I'm not going to be able to get a job. I'm getting kicked out of the military. And so why would you not continue to do, you know what I mean? Like, try to kill that pain.
It's
I have nowhere to
destructive
turn.
behavior, yeah.
I'm ashamed. The one thing I gave to my family that they could be proud of, they were so proud when I was overseas. My mom and my stepdad were wearing their Army shirts every day. They were wearing their first Cav gear. They were telling everybody where I was at, doing all that. And now this one thing now is gone, and it's tarnished now because I've been kicked out. I just didn't get regular discharge. And so now I'm like, my life's fucking over.
So these people who, you know, you volunteered to join the military, but the drugs that you received while you were in, and you know, that's how they diagnosed you, and they bear no responsibility. In fact, they put it on you to kind of bear yourself and go figure out. And
I made the choice. I'm not innocent in it.
Right.
I made the choice for sure. But there wasn't a whole lot of support, especially post that. There was nobody calling me to check on me to see how I was when I got out or anything like that. And so within no time, I ended up in prison.
how were you able to reconnect with the guys that you had deployed with, you know, afterwards? How were you received by them, or how did that go?
Oddly enough, the people I was closest to, I've never talked to since then. A lot of people that I was cordial with, deployed with, knew, but wasn't like close friends. A lot of them have kind of sat back and watched, and as my story's been out and got more public, and people knew I was sober, people knew I was out helping people to get sober. There's a couple people that I actually served with that reached out that needed help, and I was able to get them plugged in to get some help. That's been received very well. So a lot of those people, I've now become the guy of my unit of, like, if you hear somebody's not doing well as far as substance abuse goes, hit Shawn up, which I'm very proud of and love that I am that.
You think it's like a great, you know, and again, like, what can I say this as, just because they didn't reach out doesn't mean they didn't care in some kind of way. But I would, at least that's what I would think. I don't know what the experience was. Did you feel like they just like cast you aside?
Yeah, but I feel I probably gave them every reason to cast me aside. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I wasn't showing up well as a soldier at the end. I wasn't showing up well as a friend at the end. You know what I mean? It gets to the point where, like, all right, he's not going to save himself. I can't save him.
Yeah.
So I don't blame anybody. But I got brothers out there that I love, that I'll love to the end of this day, that I hope I connect with before it's all said and done, for sure.
I guess, is that in your path of just moving on past your drug use, it almost seems like you have this framework in mind of, like, it's not what they owe me, it's what I can like, what can I do to
100%.
Yeah,
nobody I served with owes me a thing.
Yeah.
If there's so much of my life, man, you know, I don't know if it's healthy or not, probably need to talk about it in therapy, but there's so much of my life now, even to this day, that it's like trying to prove myself or make people proud. Like, I live to try to make people proud. Still have it in me to try to want to make my mother proud, make my wife proud, make my friends proud, make these guys that help me with the podcast proud. Like, everything I do, that's what I'm trying to do. And so I tell people a lot of times, everything I do is with a chip on my shoulder, because I did get cast aside. People didn't want to be around me, didn't want to talk to me. And so now everything I do, you know, to a greater degree to try to prove people wrong, or to let them know, like, I might have been that for a little bit, but that ain't me. I'll show you who I am.
I think that is part of, you know, and when you say that, it makes me think of how veterans specifically, or people who are, you know, depressed, they think about it like, I'm no longer an asset. And now I've created where, like, I want to please you, and now all of a sudden I've become this burden, you know. And it's almost like, I think one of the things that when John passed away, he felt like he was doing us a favor, which I just, like, could not.
That's what I'm saying, right? What you just said. That's the feeling I get when I'm talking about taking part in extreme behaviors. To, if that happens, so be it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I felt like I was a burden, or, you know, I didn't just want to outright do it because I didn't want my family to carry around that pain. You know what I mean? I didn't want them to carry around the pain of me taking my own life. So if something does it for me, cool.
Yeah. It was, you know, it was funny. Actually, it's not funny.
I get what you're saying.
It's horrible. But so when and let's back up, you know, like, for a second. so I went, and when I graduated, I went to, I was so insecure about what I wanted. And I had this thing that made me happy in running. I knew I didn't want to do that anymore. But I had this other thing that I was like, that I had, my friends had done, which was to try to become a SEAL. And, I look at the reasons for going when I I joined the Navy and going that route. I had a total lack of respect for what I was getting into. I looked at it as, I'm going to go get my gold star, where people can say, good job, Pat, you are a good person, you've done well, and this to impress people. It was all about me. And there's a reason they call the SEAL teams the SEAL teams. They are teams. They're team guys, And so I just didn't understand, I think, a lot about what I was getting at. I looked at it as an athletic accomplishment. So I'm tough, and I know I was tough. Like I've been through very physically difficult things.
Right.
I knew in the end I would learn something from it, regardless of the outcome. Even when we were in boot camp, everybody went around and they asked you, "Why are you here? Why are you doing this?" And I don't know if there's ever like a right answer, but I knew that my answer, I knew it would only get me so far. And so I'd done well. We, made it through Hell Week and second phase and got to the end of third phase and really ended up failing BUD/S because of myself and my own performance. But I think really it hardened at not being a good teammate and thinking about myself before others. And
real quick, for those that don't know, will you explain what BUD/S is?
Yeah. BUD/S stands for Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training. It's essentially the pipeline or the selection process that SEAL candidates have to go through, and starts off with 3 different phases of 6 months in total. And if you pass everything at once, you can go for 6 months. But if you're lucky like me, then you get to do multiple rounds of everything, and you get really hooked up. And then they start to know your name, and that's really where the fun starts.
Right.
This is when they know who you are.
Right.
The instructors do, but all these instructors that are there, they're all combat veterans. They're all pipe hitters. They're getting after it, and even the guys you're with are amazing individuals. Just men, and everyone say this isn't SEAL training. It's man school.
Yeah,
and it's 100% right, because BUD/S in its entirety, in terms of being technically very difficult, it's not. Like everyone thinks it's this technical thing. No, it's a crucible. It's a crucible phase, and it's really meant for who wants to be there, who doesn't, who has the tools that we want to work with, and because once you get through BUD/S, you go through SQT and you get to your team, you're just getting your foot in the door. Essentially, there's so much work to be done after that.
Just getting started.
Yeah. So I think my experience was, again, I served myself more than I served my country, and but along the way, I made some cool friends. I had a great experience, a newfound understanding for what these gentlemen go through, and just I think also there's this the SEALs in general, and just people who, when I was there, you're just like, you look at the fleet and you're just like, oh, I don't want to go to the fleet, and yeah, the fleet sucks. It's from everything I've heard, but I think in the end, you kind of look at the regular military, because you're catered to. You're a high value. You're an asset.
Yep.
That the Navy wants to invest in.
Yep.
And you can't get this kind of arrogance about it. But I think it's another bad attitude to have. It's you're no better than anybody else in the military. You're not, it's a specific job. How do you want to do it? And again, I was lucky enough because a lot of my friends who my college roommate made it through. Other teammates that I had made it through. And that was kind of hard, being the odd man out through that experience, but it taught me a lot, and I moved on in my life. But during that time, I think a lot of the things that I was struggling with was Johnny was also struggling with, to find himself and what he wanted to do. And we just grew further and further apart. Our conversations were not good over the phone, and he had his first attempt at suicide. And what I was saying earlier was he he was thinking about other people constantly. Now, not many people know this. Dude put a 7.62 plate behind his head because he was going to shoot himself. But the thought behind that was that the bullet would not hit anybody else.
Right.
What are you doing? Like that's how you're thinking about other people that much. You have so much more to offer. That people would not even think about. Oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to think about how I could potentially hurt somebody else. That blew me away. So that happened, and I was getting out of the Navy, and I knew the situation that I was going into, and in my experience, I got to be very close with some of my instructors. They even though you didn't make it through the program, I think that there was no sour grapes, and you move on with your life, and so when I got out, I got hired to coach at Samford University in Birmingham.
I was going to bring this up because this is a perfect segue in some regards, because you were talking about the reason you didn't make it into Buds is because you're out for yourself. And it's funny how your journey would then take you into coaching, which is not about yourself, and it's about giving yourself to other people.
Yeah, and I think that is something that isn't a switch that turns on. I think that you have to get very careful about. I knew coaching because it was the soup I swam in as an athlete, so I knew how I would want to be coached.
Right.
But it also taught me a lot. I mean, there were a lot of times where, Pat, you're making this about you, making it about the kid. Oh yeah, I mean, I remember I got on the phone with my high school coach, and I told him, hey, I got hired. I can't wait to get out there. We've got it's a great opportunity. And he's like, and I was like, you got any advice for me? He's like, yeah. He's like, you sure you want this? I said, yeah, lay it on me. He's like, it's about a relationship. It all starts with a relationship. And I had people tell me they don't care what you know until they know that you care. And my first year coaching, and I made mistakes then, and I'm going to make mistakes. I'll make mistakes when I'm 25. I'll make mistakes when I'm 35. But I think in the end, not every kid. You just have to learn on the way, and it goes beyond the X's and O's of actually being really sound. And that's one thing I was very good at. I knew how to train. I knew how to program. But just because I value it doesn't mean you ought to value it either. You need to, I would constantly project my goals onto my athletes. And it's like, well, hold on.
You didn't get them to buy in first.
Exactly. Well, and they're going to buy in with trust and consistency. That's how a team is built. And you have, a lot of those lessons that I learned in the Navy. And the funny thing is like, I should have calmed way down, because you got this guy coming out of Buds, going to a coaching situation. Right. Oh, I'm instructor Pat now.
Right.
No, not a great way to do things. I think I had one kid, shout out, he's in the Army now, but I think he missed his study hall hours by like a ton, and I had him bear crawl into his academic counselor's office and like stand at attention and apologize. Luckily, that gentleman was the former Air Force, so we were good. But thinking back, I should have been fired on the spot.
Yeah, the traditional universities aren't going to put up with that.
Well, no, not at all. And there's no place for that. I mean, that you had to change your mentality.
Yeah,
but
sure.
I mean, the military does have some things that work, because nobody was ever late for study hall again. and that kid was an awesome. He was such a sport, and he's tough as nails, and he's a good friend today. But yeah, so
what's his name?
Double D, Dylan.
Shout out Dylan.
Yeah, and so the biggest thing about that first year, though, was with that team was, I think we really bonded well, was because they all knew about what they knew that I was struggling with my brother, but they couldn't see everything.
And your brother was still...
He was still living. He was living in a halfway house at the time. And basically he was using... My mother wanted to help him. And that's the thing. It's like when you're sitting this on the outside and you see it happening, you're like, I have to salvage this relationship with my mom. How do I help? How do I do something? And she was just getting manipulated. because he, it was, like I said earlier, it's two different people. And she tried to write a contract with him, on something about what he was going to do. I was like, Mom, what if he doesn't do that? What are you going to do then?
Yeah.
Are you because like she's like, well, I'll do this. I'm like, you haven't, and she was so emotional. She did not want to lose. She lost her husband. She didn't want to lose her firstborn child.
And that is ingrained in a mother.
Yeah.
That is the hardest thing I deal with, dealing with addicts and stuff like that, is a dad will get it pretty quick. The dad's like, oh, cut them off? Cool. We're done. In most cases. Yeah. A mom, it takes a lot longer. Like, that's their baby. You know what I mean? And so to get them to do that, and then that's what unfortunately, it sucks that that's the people we hurt the most as an addict or an alcoholic is our loved ones.
Sure.
Because those are the people that aren't going to just let go of us like the rest of the world, like all the people I served with let go because it was time. But my mom was there till the end. She was the very last one until all of a sudden she stopped picking up the phone, and that's when I knew my life was not right. But it sucks because as an addict, all you got to do is give me a little string. If you give me a little string, I will manipulate my way and weave myself a blanket. You know what I mean? I'll do every nice act you're going to do for me. I'll twist and manipulate to get what I want. Yeah. And it's nothing against my mother. She's the last person in this world I'd ever want to hurt. But the only thing that matters at that moment is I need money. I need to get high, period. And then we could talk about everything afterward.
And that was the thing also. She knew John's in the Marines. John was a Marine. He struggled with this. And now it's like, well, okay. You cannot. They wanted to, I think, PTSD is something that I don't even know if really people can define it. I think that some clinician can or physician in a way can, but they were just he's got PTSD. I was like, okay, granted, Mom, but what do we do about this? I was like, because I guarantee you that he's not going to struggle nearly as much if he's not drinking and he's not doing drugs. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of our problems and his ability to tackle and grapple with being out of the Marine Corps and dealing with being overseas and not being with his wherever that came from, his ability to handle that is infinitely more powerful if he's not intoxicated. Sure. So basically, I got some advice from one of my instructors, and he's pretty cold dude, but he was like, cut off your relationship. You have to take care. He's like, you got a new job, you better do this right, because I'm telling you right now, if you're not squared away, they're going to let you go. Yeah. And you got to do that the right way. And
he told you the right thing. You have to take care of you. You can't. Yeah. Unfortunately, we can't save people that aren't ready to get help.
Right. And so one of the cool things at the time was I felt an enormous responsibility to get it together because I had this incredible athlete that I was coaching at the time. And on day one, we got there and I was like, I saw her do strides and I was like, oh, I got one.
She's special.
There you go. And I had a lot of special kids on that team, a lot of very talented athletes. But her in particular was someone, this is kind of a once in a generation type athlete. And so, I wanted it for her bad. Mm-hmm. And her head was in the right spot, and we just trained. And I trying to paint her the vision about what we could do. And I remember I was getting excited, and I was telling my boss, I was like, man, I think she can really do something indoors. He coached a lot of great athletes, seen a lot of kids. Coached multiple NCAA champions himself. Very, very, very good coach. He's like, well, let's not get ahead of ourselves, And I'm like, I'm telling you, I know. And I was, first year coach, thinking I knew it. I was, So there was some doubt there, but I believed that this girl had what it took. So we got through cross country and how, works in college track and field is you do cross country, indoor, and then outdoor track in the spring. Indoor is like kind of the winter and leads into the spring and. So we get this entire time we're dealing with John, we're dealing with this whole thing, and the kids they saw me grow, that I saw them, and so we were all in it together. It was a unique bond. And a lot of these guys, these athletes are my friends today. Mm-hmm. So we get to indoor track, and Carissa's running well, and I I basically, to deal with what I was going through, I had this speech I sent the team in December, and I read to them about my high school coach, Devin Hind, who I went to high school with, who one of the girls on the team actually was trained by Presley Weems. She was the best distance runner to come out of Hoover. I was the best male distance runner to come out of Hoover. And she basically, we were all sitting there, and I told her the story about my high school coach running a sub 5-minute mile every day. And it was about not using your excuses. It was like, had a really good message. And we get done and we're on a run. She goes, I bet you couldn't do that. And I was like, okay, watch me. Mm-hmm. And it was great because I just set out to do this because I was in this point where I didn't know how to figure out what I'm going to do. So I set out, I'm going to run a sub 5-minute mile. I'm going to try to break Coach Hines' record. It was like 104 days. Mm-hmm. So it was difficult. And, basically the rules are it has to be a full mile. It's not 1,600 meters. You have to figure out exactly, how long it's going to be, regardless of where you are, facilities. You have to plan. You're still doing your basic routines. Luckily, I'm a track coach, so I'm near a track a lot. Right. But that entire time, it's helping me deal with what's going on with John. Mm-hmm. And then it started to pick it up and going to different facilities. And at some point in time, I had people even come up to me, hey, Pat, are you doing your sub 5? And so we get to this day where I can't remember if it was on the 40th day or 50th day, and I had already been through a lot of, I'd been through days where I had 103-degree fever and whatnot, and still made it through. And
really?
Yeah. And I remember John had gotten in a car accident, and he thought like the cops were looking for him or something like that. He runs away, and we don't know where he's at. And so we had been out with the Marines that he had deployed with, who came back to help us look for him. We've been out in the woods all day looking for him, trying to find him. And I still had to do my mile. So I got done. I got done. We got done looking for him all day. I'm just exhausted. We haven't heard from John. We don't know where he's at. And I go to the track, and I get a text message from my brother's friend, former Marine, Mike Rudolph, who had deployed to Iraq with him. Hey, where you at? And I didn't want to look at the phone because I knew. And I just did my mile, ran under 5 minutes. Mike gets to the track. It's late at night. Lights aren't even on. And he showed me that, a man had been hit by a train in Birmingham and Hoover, right where I live. And we knew that was John. So I think that's the thing, is like having to go and drive home after that and then talk to your mom and go through that whole process. And then I had to tell the team the next, 2 days later. But I'm still coaching. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I have got to make sure that this girl succeeds, this team succeeds. And we, my whole family had flown in to be there for my mother and I. Mm-hmm. And they're like, are you going to stay here for the house? And they're like, nah. I'm like, I can't. I got to go. I'm going to go to North Carolina to go make sure these girls try and qualify for a DMR, distance medley relay. Mm-hmm. So we go and we drive up there, and it's like, everybody's like, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm fine. And I wasn't. But it was like I needed to do this, So my athlete, they got close, didn't quite make the national meet in the DMR, but Carissa qualified as an individual. So we get to nationals. And I got, she's ranked, I think, like 12th, like the last girl to get in, last or 11th girl to get into the race, something like that, or get into the meet. And I think they let the top 16 in, something like that, in the country. And the prelim, I was just like, all right, here's what we're going to do. Stay off the rail. And I gave her specific instructions. And then she goes out and she wins her heat. And I'm like, yeah, what's up? I'm like, all right, good to go. Finals coming up the next day. And I'm sitting with the 50-meter to-go mark with Vin Lanana, who's now the head coach at the University of Virginia. And, he goes, so who you think's going to win? I said, I think my girl's going to win. He's like, who's your girl? And I said, oh, Samford. He goes, Stanford? And I said, no, Samford. Sam, not Stan. And he's, I think he was associate AD at Oregon at the time. And he was kind of like, oh, cool. Like, yeah, you got a little school in the big race. Here we go.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay.
He wasn't really taking it serious.
Yeah. And, but he, he's just being polite. He's being nice. Sure. He's a good guy. And so.
In his head, though, he's like, yeah, right.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? But I remember I'm coaching her. He goes, hey, your girl looks good. I go, I know. And there's some pushing, there's some shoving, but she gets in and she's up in the front. And I told her, I said, no matter what, you better be in it with 200 to go. Like, just be in the race, co-compete. And with 250 to go, I knew it was over. I knew she was going to win. She came around, she passed Eleanor Purrier, who's an Olympian, American record holder now, world champion, passed her on the backstretch. And I didn't even look at the home stretch. I was like, I knew it was over. And so we went crazy. I turned around. Vin was right there. I gave him a big hug. I gave another coach's big hug. And then I saw my buddy Kevin Andrasik, who was the coach before me, at Samford. And he knew Carissa, and he also knew about my brother. And I saw him, and I just lost it. Started crying. And then I saw my old Texas coach. He knew. I started crying. And it was magical. It was magical. It really was. She gave me a gift I will never forget, and gave. I think about that. My first thing I wanted to do was text Mike O'Dowd. I want to tell him, thank you. You know, I wanted him to be proud of me that we had done this. As he had known, I just lost John, and I couldn't wait to call my mom. It was the craziest emotions, you know. And it was funny. I texted Mike, and I texted the other instructor. I won't mention his name, but I texted him. He's still active, and I texted him. I sent him the message, and Mike said, "Congrats!" and they're just like, "Good job." I'm like typical instructor, like, right. Yeah, like you haven't done shit, like, right. You know. But it was, you know, it's just kind of, that's awesome, but you know, that was enough for me. It was just
even getting that from them is.
Well, I think when I remember Mike told me, and I think and then the other instructor told me one time he was proud of me. That meant a lot to me, because I, not making it through buds and having this success was awesome. And and since that day, I continued on to coach. Went to Kentucky after that, and then went to Mississippi State, and learned a lot in those experiences as well. And now I'm out of coaching, but for me, I still feel like that's my calling. Yeah, I'm in sales, and coaching is sales in many ways. So you're still building great relationships with people. But I think that day showed me that, it was God's way of telling me this is where you need to be. This is how you can affect change. And so, my buddy and I, who I've worked with, was helping me, was a mentor for me as a coach. He just started this thing called the Run Plan, which is like an online coaching service. And so right now he's given me an opportunity to kind of help him out with that.
Oh, there you go.
So I'm super excited about that. Good. And so it's kind of like my way to kind of go and get into it, explore a career in sales, but also still have this piece that meant so much to me to now do.
Right. Dude, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
As you're telling the story, man, it brings me back. So you've never seen the documentary that they did on my story?
No, sir.
All right, so it's called 100 Miles to Redemption. I run a 100-mile race.
I'll be sure to definitely watch it.
Don't feel like you have to. I just didn't. I didn't want to tell you the story if you'd already seen it, but I don't want to give you a spoiler alert. I'm going to give you a spoiler alert.
You make it.
Yeah, but it's different. So, dude, I was at like mile. I got into running within my first year of running. I run 100K, qualified for Western States 100. I did well pretty quick, and so I signed up for a 100-mile race. And so my story had gotten out there, and I had done an interview with Austin Marathon with William. That's what put my story out there. One thing led to another. So now all of a sudden I'm a year and a half sober, and they're filming this documentary about me and my story and me rebuilding the relationships with my family. And so the tough thing with my story was that I was in Texas, all my family's back up north, right? And so they had been through this time and time again, hearing me say, oh, I'm sober, it's going to be different, da-da-da-da, and then I would fall off. And so they just stayed back. You know, I was sober here in Texas, but they didn't know what it truly was. And so for the first time in my life, I start running. Was never a runner growing up. I played basketball, football. If I was running without a ball in my hand, I was in trouble. It was punishment to me. So never in a million years did I ever figure I would get into running as like a true outlet in my life.
Yeah.
I first started it to try to lose a little bit of weight. Next thing I know, I'm in ultra marathons and I'm doing well. And so it was helping me rebuild my confidence. It was doing all this stuff for me. So I'm going to run the Pinhoti 100. It goes from Alabama to Georgia, basically. Lots of elevation change, lots of rugged terrain on the Appalachian Trail. And so there was a portion in the documentary about mile 70, mile 75, where I was so calorie deficient. I'm slurring my words. I didn't know what I was saying.
Been there.
And there was a gentleman that had been running with me for hours. I called him Detroit. He called me Youngstown. He saw that, and so he started shoving calories in me. So I come out of it, and so we run the whole rest of this race. And so we're going through the nighttime, which anybody that's running ultra or anything like that, the nighttime takes forever.
Yeah.
Cold, wet, you name it, it sucked. And so I can remember the sun starts coming up, and I start getting a little bit of energy back. And you know, there's so many portions where it's like I don't know if I'm gonna finish. But once the sun came up, I was like, oh shit, like I think I'm gonna finish this shit. And so I remember we got to the last aid station. He and I were together, and we're dead. I mean, everybody's dead. Nobody's running anymore. And so at the aid stations, have you run a trail race ever?
I've not run a trail race.
Nice.
I've done other things that are similar, but
so
no.
Trail races, especially ultras, 100 milers and stuff, people will go. They go hard at the aid stations, right? They're cooking food. They want you to look forward to coming there and grabbing a big whole handful. You'll have hot bacon that's fresh off the thing. You'll grab a handful of gummy bears. It's just like a smorgasbord. And so this very nice woman had made banana bread. And at this point, I couldn't even get food in me anymore. Like my body's revolting against me. There's people puking. Somebody shit themselves over here. Like it's destruction.
Yep.
And so I get there and I take one little nibble of this banana bread, and it's the greatest thing I've ever tasted. So I smash 2 pieces, and within a minute, I get this jolt of energy where I'm like, all right, let's go. Let's go. And my buddy Detroit, he's like, man, look, I'll see you at the end. Just go. I was like, bro, I'm not leaving you. No, fuck that. We're finishing together. He's like, dude, I'll see you at the end. Go. So I was like, all right. And so I start running, and I start like running at a good clip. And so there's 10 miles.
You got 30? When was the aid station again? Or was that?
We're about mile 90 at this point.
Okay, so you got 10 to go.
Yeah, 10 to go.
Okay.
And so it might have been 12 at that point because I was still in the woods.
Sure.
And when you hit the road, when you come out of the woods off the trail and you finally hit the road, you know you got 10 left.
Okay.
And so, bro, I get this jolt of energy and I start running. Most people are power hiking at this point. So they're looking at me like, what the fuck's up with this guy? Like, how's he running full sprint at mile 90? But I just got this energy and I just felt amazing. And so I come out onto the road, and that's when it hit me like, I'm going to fucking finish this race. I just ran 100 miles. Like, holy shit. And the camera crew's in a van. They're following along with me, and then they take off, and I can see off in the distance this high school football field. That's where the race is going to end. And so I see it way off in the distance. And I start thinking about like the night that I had just been through. And one of the thoughts that I kept going through my head were, you know, what if my family could see me right now? Because when I'm out on the trail in the middle of the night, there's no camera crew. They would see me at aid stations. And so what if my family was sitting there watching me? Like, could I really quit? Could I quit with them watching? And that was the thing that kept me going. You know, everything in my brain and my body is telling me, you know, you could stop right now. Who's going to say shit? You'll be fine. But that's what kept me going. And I remember I had told my mom that I was going to be running this race. They didn't say much, but I remember getting a text from my grandma that morning saying that she would be following along on her iPad. And so she could look up the app and she could see when I hit certain aid stations and all that. And so I knew my grandma was paying attention and watching. And that meant the world to me. And so, but the big thing was like, man, I wonder if my mom knows. I wonder if my sister knows. my sister was the hardest one to try to get back in my corner. She was just so hurt about where my life had been, and she was just wasn't proud of who her brother was. And so that was a major motivator. And so I'm running this last 10 miles, and I feel good, and like the high school football field's getting closer and closer and closer, and now I can hear cowbells going off and people yelling and screaming. And I remember I came into the stadium, and you come up on the track, and then you're going to basically do 3/4 lap to straight along to the finish. And I come in, and I could hear the people that I had went to the race with, my friend Penny, my friend Boz. I could hear them screaming for me. Mm-hmm. I could hear them yelling. And so I just remember I came in, and I was like trying to keep my shit together, because I know there's going to be cameras at the end waiting for me. I'm like trying not to cry, but I'm so excited. I'm so proud of what I just did. Like, I just went from getting out of prison, hardcore heroin addiction, throwing any other drug on top of that you want I was doing, and now within a year and a half, I'm doing a 100-mile race. And so I come around, and I hit the straightaway, dude, and as soon as I hit the straightaway, I look up, and I can see my mom's blonde hair and my sister standing next to her, and I lose it. Like, me trying to hold it together and be a tough guy was not happening. Like, they're standing there waiting for me as I cross the finish line. Biggest surprise of my entire life. I sit there and immediately lose it, and like, you know what I mean, they hug and embrace me, and it was just, it's the most special moment I had in my entire life. Like, for that to happen, first of all, and that to happen on film and all this stuff, and like, running, dude, in this really cool, unique way was the catalyst of what was able to help me rebuild the relationship with my family, because for so long they had just heard me talk, and now they knew from the running, like, oh wow, he's really changed his life. And so I didn't even know that they'd be paying attention that I was even running the race, let alone to the director set it up for them to be able to fly down, then be willing, and then be sitting there at the end. But the running in many, many ways saved my life. It's one of the biggest tools I try to get people, especially in addiction, try to get them involved in. It's very hard to get people involved in.
Yeah, it's running to me. It's a vehicle, like so many other things, to grow for people. And the cool thing about running is that it's a barrier to entry that is available to almost anyone. Mm-hmm. And you technically don't even need shoes. How do I know this? Because some of the best runners in the world run without shoes. Yep. Would run without shoes and come out of, like there's some out of, Rwanda who came out and to escape genocide and actually became really great runners. Lost Boys of Sudan as well. So there's really no excuse not to do it if that's something you want to do. But I think what it does for you is it's just as hard. It can be just as lonely. It can be just as, the camaraderie can be there, mm-hmm. the emotional waves, ups and downs. Running, again, it's not going to, you get what you put into it. Mm-hmm. And that is, I think that's why I think, running has been in some kind of capacity. It was really great, when you see other people, they find it, success, joy in it, and you've been telling them about it. And, I think running, it's one thing why marathons are so much fun to get excited about sometimes, and I when we ran the LA Marathon, I ran with Mike and I ran with all these, a couple SEALs and 2 Rangers and we ran in holding the American flag together, and that was, that was emotional for me.
You guys have a picture of that?
We do.
Got to.
Yeah.
Please, if you can, man, send it. I'd love to put it up for this.
Yeah, for sure. We will.
And the video of your girl. What's her name?
Carissa Nelson.
Carissa Nelson, beast mode. Love that shit.
Yeah. Yeah, we've, I think that it's one thing I think is really important to understand is like those things are great, but there's always another race. Mm-hmm. There's going to be another competition. There's going to be something else that we have to, gear up for. And, it's even in Hell Week is like, when I was in Buds, it's like, well, how do you make this week Hell Week? Mm-hmm. How hard do you want to make this week?
Yep.
And I think about like, sometimes there's like, you get this you get this confidence, look what I just did. But it's like, dude, you got to keep earning it. It's like that will get dull real quick if you don't keep that that knife sharp. So, I appreciate you having me here.
Dude.
I just wanted to thank you. This is emotionally difficult to talk about some of those things, but I would hope everybody who's listening to this understands this. If you know a veteran, if you know somebody who's struggling, don't wait to be there for them in some kind of way. I mean, I think there's something to be said, about. It doesn't have to be unsolicited, all the time. I think you can, but, let them know that you can just learn to ask the right questions and listen. And I think if you ask the right questions, I think they'll the right things will be said. And I think that's a good start, That's what veterans need. That's what people who are, in their crucible need to be heard.
Right. And just to kind of piggyback off that and add a layer to it, because I know what helps me, and it's easy for us in the recovery community because we do so much of it. But if you're going to have a difficult conversation with somebody and, they've been through traumatic experience, if you're somebody too that's been through traumatic experience of any sort, it doesn't have to be military shit or whatever, but what I've found in my whole journey is my ability to be vulnerable and open up and talk about my stuff enables other people to be able to open up and talk about their stuff. So when I start talking about heroin addiction or being in prison or anything like that, I get bombarded with messages from people that are telling me about all their stuff that have nothing to do with shooting heroin or going to prison, but it gives them that safe space to open up. And so, if you're going to have that conversation with them, don't hesitate to start dropping some of your own stuff.
Sure.
Because you never know. You might think it's nothing, but you never know who needs to hear it.
100%. 110%. And again, Shawn, thank you very much for having me. This has been helpful.
Before you go, I want to end on a high note. First of all, if somebody's listening to this and they want to be able to donate to the organization that you were running for, or they want to help with veteran suicide or anything like that, where can they do that? Okay,
so number one, if you want to donate, Guardian Revival is the organization that there's a lot of veteran organizations out there. I think in my experience, they do some of the best work. And I have, you can donate on my page, but honestly, Guardian Revival is pretty easy to find. If you have seen a computer in your life, you can figure out how to donate.
Right.
But that is who I would reach my, donate my money to. But I think more importantly than money is, if you know veterans, don't say just thank you for your service.
Right.
That's good. But if you got time to watch their kids, it's not just about the veteran. It's about the family.
Mm-hmm.
It's about their children. Like, they're all in it together. They're affected by post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
In a very traumatic way. Generational trauma.
The gym I worked out at this morning, it's funny how this happened. She had a Navy sweatshirt on. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, are you a vet? She goes, no, my husband's in the Navy. I was like, oh, you have the toughest job in the military. And she laughed like I wasn't being serious. I'm like, oh, no, like, you for sure have the toughest job in the military. And you could tell, like, that was being serious and what that meant to her. It's like, that's very real. It's not easy for the families at all.
I think about, like, my buddy, my college roommate just deployed. And I think about his wife and his little girl every now and then. I just, like, what an incredibly strong person she is, what they're getting, what they have to deal with. And just, like, also just... he's able to keep, I don't know what that relation, that how that dynamic always works, because I'm not married, but it's way harder than I can probably imagine. And anyways, I'm thinking about them and thinking about a lot of people out there that, there's kids, there's parents whose husbands, or there's wives who, or husband, their loved one's not coming home and never will, and they still got to live with that. Again, my message is for people is there's more that you can do with money. There's better ways to connect, and if you ask the right questions and you listen, and you're there and you want to help, I think that's just educating yourself as much as you can. And like I said, like, hey, go take your wife out for a date. Let me watch the kids tonight. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that's dope. Very good stuff, man.
Yeah.
I want to end this on a high note. So I usually ask this question every podcast. For you, I'm going to ask it in a little bit of a different way, right? So I'm going to have some lead-up questions. So off the top of your head, first thing that comes to mind, if you could run against anybody, who would you run against?
Oh, man.
First thing that comes to your mind.
Probably Prefontaine if I was in shape.
Okay. All right. So assuming you're in the best shape you've ever been, you're going to run against Prefontaine.
Yeah.
What race are you guys going to run?
Oh, we're definitely going to run a mile.
Okay.
That's the one I know I can at least come close to winning.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. You're running Prefontaine in the mile. What is your walkout song? What is the song that's going to get you jacked up for you to go run this mile or for you to listen to while you're running this mile?
Probably DMX.
Which one?
The Road.
Rough Riders Anthem?
Rough Riders Anthem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good one. Very good one. Love it. Usually ask people if they're going out for the UFC Heavyweight Championship what's their walkout song, but yours I had to keep it with the running theme.
Yeah.
But brother, I cannot thank you enough for coming on, man. Like seriously, opening up, being vulnerable. I hope many people hear this, and I hope it hits home with them, dude. The fact of you coming on here, trusting me to come talk about this stuff publicly, brother, it means a lot to me, dude. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anything I can ever do to help what you're doing, or you or anybody, man, please let me know.
We will.
All right, bro. The way we like to end each episode is everybody just heard your amazing story, but I'd like them to get to know you a little bit more. So if you'd be willing to take a look in your camera, maybe throw out some I am statements that let them know who you are.
Absolutely. Yeah.